Non-binary is a spectrum of genders, not solely male or female, which fall under the transgender umbrella, since non-binary people don't identify with their assigned sex. Its precursor term, genderqueer, gained wider use in the 90s thanks to activists, particularly Ricky Ann Wilchins, who used it to describe anyone who was gender non-conforming. Australia was the first country to legally recognise a classification outside of male and female, and non-binary people have since found representation in different forms of media. These range from Brooke Hathaway in Hollyoaks to Jay in the film They, as well as various characters in Steven Universe, but there is very little mention of people outside the gender binary before them. Science fiction, by its very nature, has always been ahead of its time, and has depicted gender fluidity from as early as the 1900s. This was mostly among aliens though, Isaac Asimov describing trigender beings in The Gods Themselves, and Ursula Le Guin depicting ambisexual humanoids in The Left Hand of Darkness. Robert A. Heinlein did describe an intersex person, using time travel to impregnate a younger version of themselves in 1959, but at no point does the protagonist question their place in the gender binary. Samuel R. Delany, however, described as the strongest, most radical voice for sexual justice among male SF figures, wrote the first story describing an actual human being who identified with neither male nor female. I and Gommorah was first published in Dangerous Visions, a 1967 anthology of transgressive science fiction. It was introduced by its editor, Harlan Ellison, as revolutionary, and has since been called one of the greatest stories by a gay man in the 60s. The plot follows a type of astronaut, known as a spacer, who has been neutered before puberty to avoid the effects of space radiation on their gametes. At various parts of the story, they are perceived as both male and female, as well as neither. This sets them apart from the gender-neutral protagonists of Good Omens, who are referred to as non-binary by some critics, despite presenting as men. Delany also avoids the use of conventional pronouns for his main character, as well as their fellow spacers, an important precedent for modern times. The title, I and Gommorah, carries symbolic weight. It references the biblical cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, known for their sinful behaviour and ultimate destruction. Delany draws a parallel between the societal rejection of the spacers and the biblical condemnation of these cities, prompting readers to reflect on the consequences of societal norms and the rejection of those who deviate from them. Conflict repeatedly enters the story as a result of the Frelks, members of a fetishistic subculture that focuses on spacers. These are people who are neither heterosexual nor homosexual, and derive sexual satisfaction from their partners being without gender. It is worth noting that these people are also ostracized, but not to the same degree. The futuristic society of I and Gommorah treats different sexualities less harshly than different kinds of people. Because the spacers are typically sex workers between jaunts into space, they are frequently propositioned by members of the subculture. The protagonist finds themselves in two minds after a woman approaches them but refuses to pay because she wants an emotional connection as well as a physical one. Though also craving an emotional connection, the protagonist is unable to give her what she wants, owing to the need of payment to feel validated. Beatrice the 16th by Irene Clyde is an important precursor to this story. Its author, writing in 1909, was an activist, opposed to the concept of a gender binary, and has been described as non-binary, transgender, or as a trans woman by several modern writers. Her novel explores a utopian society, founded on principles of love and companionship, whose citizens regard themselves as all being of the same, all-encompassing gender, despite being of different biological sexes. Delany achieves greater relevance to modern times by having his characters exist in a world where most people identify with the gender assigned at birth. His characters also aren't part of a culture that rejects the concept of gender, but exist on a spectrum with men and women on either end. As one of the first black science fiction writers, often regarded as the father of Afrofuturism, and one of the first to be openly gay, Delany has also fostered discussion regarding a range of other subjects, as well as how they intersect. Writers continue to explore gender and its relationship to other aspects of identity, such as race, sexuality, and disability. While gender fluidity has always existed in Native American and Asian societies, with the concept of two-spirit and third sex dating back thousands of years, these are terms used to describe a gender variant. Delany was truly ahead of his time by exploring a character who does not identify with any, in a manner distinct from androgyny. Though the protagonist is at different times perceived as having been originally both male and female, they are still seen as neither, as opposed to merely possessing male and female characteristics. With a complex psychology, they represent a departure from tokenism before gender tokenism even entered the mainstream.